G'day, Graham Ross from the Garden Clinic. Welcome to veggie growing. Now, I'm running a little bit late, you know, and most gardeners tend to be during the season. So let's get in early. I've already planted some tomatoes a few weeks ago and they're going gangbusters. So I thought I'd just sort of show you what I did then and how you can have great success. But of course, it always starts with the soil. Now, this soil at this little patch here that I've left, just to show you what I do, which might help you in your garden. So it's basically a couple of shovels of my own home compost, which just looks great. And yes, there's some onion in there, there's some citrus, cut grass, and of course lots of kitchen scraps and prunings. Now, of course, the thing is, you've got to dig it into your own soil. Now, if you haven't got your own compost, or maybe your garden's just not big enough to have one, you can actually buy really good quality organic compost these days. The old stuff was full of, you know, street waste that's been shredded up and a bit of pine bark thrown in, but now you can get really good quality compost, consistent right throughout the whole year. It doesn't vary depending on what's going into it by a machine. Okay, now I just dig that through. This soil's not too bad. I've been working it now for 20 odd years and it's built up good texture, but I've just taken out a crop, so it's used up a lot of the nutrition that's in there. Okay, avocado seed there. Hopefully it won't germinate, but you never know when you've got your own compost going. Just another sprinkle. Great, okay. Now, there's a lot of controversy of whether you feed now or not, but I tend to. But I use an organic fertiliser, 100% organic, on all of my veggies that I'm planting right throughout the year. That's a way I can tell that what I'm feeding my family, feeding myself, sharing with friends is based totally organic. There are no chemicals going into it. So basically, the soil's ready. Now, I've already given the seedlings, which I bought now. Okay, most of us do buy seedlings. For those real emerald green thumbs, you're very likely germinating your own seed, and that would start in late winter if you can put them on a nice warm shelf somewhere in the kitchen, somewhere you can get moisture to them, bit of sunlight, and get those seeds germinating. I missed out this year because I've been travelling a lot and I like to get back into my own garden and get going and get planting. So I bought my seedlings at the local garden centre. Now, you'll find the holes I'm digging for tomatoes will be a lot deeper than maybe what you're accustomed to. Okay, so let's go for one right here at the front. It's nice and friable, plenty of organic matter in there, heaps in fact. Now, that's very likely twice the depth that you would normally plant. But you see, I'm planting these tall fellows here. Now, this particular one is Tommy Toe, a great tomato, really sweet, smallish, so doesn't tend to attract Queensland fruit fly. Some of the others that I've got, like Groslis, an old-fashioned French tomato from the late 1800s, it'll need a bit of protection because it's a bigger tomato. But these smaller ones are just beautiful. Okay, so let's just have a look here. You'll notice coming off the side are little shoots. So these little shoots here, I tend to want to remove those because they'll be sitting on the ground. Even this little leaf here, I'm going to thumb it off. Take that one out. And there's one here at the back. I'll take the stake out because it's pretty useless. Now watch out for these little rings because it's okay when the seedling's small, but as it gets bigger, as thick as your thumb or forefinger, they can ring bark. So just make sure you take these little stakes, ties off from when you buy them. Now see all this stem here, it will produce roots, believe it or not. So the more secure the plant is in the ground, the more stable it's going to be. If we get a bit of a windstorm or a bit of a summer blow through, a southerly buster coming through, why not take advantage of the plant's ability to produce extra roots? So that's why I go down a lot deeper. But just before I pop it into that hole, I'm just going to throw in just a little bit of my organic fertiliser. 100% organic, remember, because that way there's no chemicals involved that are going to be advantageous to the vegetables that you're eating. Okay, now when I backfill it, you'll notice that the whole plant is completely enveloped. Push it down a bit, there we go. Now I always, whether it's a tree, shrub or a little seedling, I always leave a little bit of a ring around it so that when I'm watering, that water goes straight down into the root system. Okay, great. I'll stake these later. They'll get to around about, this particular variety, Tommy Toe, gets to around about just on a metre, bit under, bit over, depending on how good it is. And I always put the label somewhere nearby so I know exactly what I'm playing with, okay, and what I'm growing. Okay, let's plant the other ones, and you can come in a little bit closer and just see how deep these holes really are. Okay, now this fellow here is actually a yellow tomato. See the fruit there? All yellow tomatoes are low acid. So if you've got indigestion or you've got ulcers and duodenal ulcers and all that sort of jazz, go for yellow tomatoes. You can still eat them. So if your doc or your advisor said, oh, you can't eat tomatoes again, well, you certainly can. You can eat the yellow ones. And they don't only come in small little cherry type tomatoes, they come in full-size tomatoes like this little fellow here. Interestingly, the original tomatoes that were grown in the Andes Mountains in South America were originally yellow. They were taken by accident by the natives in that region down to where the Aztecs were. They were trading different crops, and suddenly the Aztecs noticed that these tomatoes started to come up. Over a century or so, they eventually developed a more red-coloured tomato. It wasn't completely red like we know them today, but over the horizon came the conquistadors, and of course they took chocolate, coffee, tomatoes, dahlias, a whole range of plants from Mexico back to Spain and Portugal, and then the beginnings, the history of the tomato really began. And all these yellow tomatoes eventually were hybridized and developed into bright red tomatoes that we know today. So it's an interesting journey, the tomatoes that it's had from South America to around the world. Okay, those little fellows are in. This little fellow at the back is a truss tomato, which means you get a hand of tomatoes. Again, the tomatoes are quite small, so I'm hoping to avoid any fruit fly except for these bigger fellows that'll grow bigger tomatoes later in the season. So now I just need to give them a good drink.